Hello and welcome to the Arc in Headingley for another edition of Rugby League Back Chat. More verbal chest bumping about the sport, although as I cover for Dave Woods on this edition, we've assembled a panel not only of chest bumpers, but shin kickers and gut barges as well. Please welcome our panel. Danny Lockwood is the publisher of League Weekly. Graham Lovett is a rugby league broadcaster and journalist. And Phil Kaplan is the managing editor of 4020 magazine. Danny, round 18, the mantra is every minute matters in 2015. Does it still?
Yeah, I think for pretty much everybody except right down at the bottom basement club Wakefield, who of course are looking now towards a little bit of a rebuilding project under their new coach Brian Smith. But up at the top, absolutely, never more so probably in the Super League era, Richard, because everybody's had a little run at it. Leeds Rhinos they seem to have lost the wind from their sails. It's back in St Helens after a cracking game, or at least a cracking second half against Wigan at the weekend, and it's all to play for. I think whether you're arguing about the top four, the middle four or the bottom four, everybody except Wakefield still got a vested interest.
You say it's never happened before, but obviously we did have it last year. I mean, that was the big irony about bringing in this new structure when last season we had 6 clubs going into the last 2 rounds who could have finished league leaders. Do you think that because the season is so long now, I mean, we've added these extra games, that there's more conservatism about? I don't think we've seen that many high-quality games yet this year.
I think you've been a bit harsh there, Philip, really. I think there's been some...
Well, we shouldn't confuse excitement because games are close with quality.
I think we've seen some good games. I agree with Dan, it's not taking shape properly yet, which is quite surprising with only 5 games left. You would expect to see some pattern, but Leeds have had their run and fallen away. Saints have there and come back. Wigan started badly and then came again and had 2 horrendous results, one in the Challenge Cup and the one at St Helens. So it hasn't taken shape yet. And with only 5 games left, I find that quite surprising. You'd have some idea of how it was going to finish up.
Difficult to say, I think, at this stage who you'd put your money on, either to finish top. I think we've all pretty much got a good idea of the top 4. I think you're looking at 4 clubs from 5, maybe 6 at a push. But I
think we know the top 3 maybe, but I'm not sure we know the 4th.
Yeah, Castleford have surprised me. They were always going to take time to settle down. That was an absolutely landmark win for them on Thursday night. When they went and beat Leeds at Headingley. I thought that was the game of the weekend. I know Saints and Wigan was really exciting. I thought it was a really low quality first half. I thought Saints showed some real character, and John Wilkin had a tremendous game for me in the second half when they really walked away from Wigan.
Wigan made a lot of mistakes.
But I think Darryl Powell is now finding his best team, which was always going to take him a little bit of time. And I think apart from Huddersfield, no one else, Wigan, you can always say, yeah, we know that it's Matty Smith and George Williams. But I look around the other clubs in that top half dozen, and I can't see a team that says, I've got my 2 best half-backs on the field and they're going to win me games. Certainly not at Warrington, and at Leeds at the moment, they don't seem to know what their best combination is.
Castleford have got an interesting modus operandi as well. They're starting really strongly, withdrawing some of their players, and then it's when they put the guys like Grant Millington and Andy Lynch back on again, they're finishing strongly. I mean, that's a really good sign, I think, of a team ethic.
They're looking a well-coached side again, aren't they, like they did last season. We all expect them to carry on.
And they've got a couple of big players to come back as well.
I think that the overall thing is as well, the fixtures for the Super 8, how they're going to finish up. I mean, you got 4 at home and 3 away if you're at the top.
Yeah.
I've seen a fixture list where it's got Wigan playing away to Leeds, Warrington and St Helens. Well, that's a really difficult...
Well, Catalan then come into the argument, because if they can scrape into it, they're so good at home, do they become more of a threat? The trouble is the points are carried forward as well, so our teams in 7th and 8th materially going to make a challenge on that top 4 when we break into the 8th.
So you've dealt Catalans in already?
I'm not sure. I think the Challenge Cup is going to be very interesting because not all of the clubs now are involved in that. So again, Wigan will get a couple of extra weekends, Huddersfield will, Castleford will. That could work to their advantage.
Well, let's just try and answer some difficult questions then. You say it's difficult questions, Danny, but I don't mind asking them. Who is going to finish top of the Super League? Who is going to have the plum run when it comes to the Super 8s?
Right now, you'd have to put your money on St Helens purely because they've got the position and they had a good win, and they are showing some resilience despite not having Luke Walsh, who's been missing more than he's been hitting in terms of even getting on the paddock. I've been really impressed by Alex Walmsley. I thought he carried their pack at the weekend. John Wilkin, as I say, I thought that was a man of the match performance from him. And bringing in Shannon McDonnell when they lost Johnny Lomax.
Good call.
That was a great call. They look strong all around at the minute. I don't know what's happened to Leeds, because 3 or 4 weeks ago we thought that they were sailing away with it. But you know, the Liam Sutcliffe experiment kind of got parked for a while, and suddenly they don't seem to know what they're doing in midfield.
Vote for Saints. Phil, who are you going to go for?
One of the things that is interesting at the moment is that having gone to 12 teams, there are less, if hardly any, apart from, with the greatest respect, Wakefield, gimme matches. So squads can't be rotated and rested as much this year. And that does affect a club like Leeds when they have injuries and older players. So I think, again, there's always this mid-season where they do tail off a bit. They've got 3 world-class backs to come in, Briscoe, Hardacre and Moon. So I wouldn't rule them out on the basis of the fact that they've got Saints and Wigan still to play. So it's actually in Leeds' hands. If they can get everybody on board and fit, I still think they'll have a say in it. Then? I still think they'll have a say in it.
Graham?
I think you just hit the nail on the head, Philip, though, because it depends on the fixtures. We've all got 5 games left. I'm not quite sure of...
Saints have a very tough running.
That comes into the equation, doesn't it? You said that Leeds have got to play Saints
at home.
That's in the equation as well. Richard, I don't know. I wouldn't like to...
Well, Wigan are out of the cup, aren't they? You know, I mean...
Do you have to remind me on that? Do you have to keep mentioning that?
Sorry, but it will come into it, because we've got a cup weekend coming up next week. Hull KR, who I thought were going to make a real bolt for the top 4 this season, they're just you never know which team is going to turn up for Hull KR, but they have got their eyes on a big cup match.
But they could have lost Campese for the season.
Well, that's the iffy one.
But I've always liked Albert Kelly and Maurice Blair anyway, because they played together. You know, they're 2 quality half-backs. I know Kelly went missing a little bit when they got hammered at Wigan in the league, but they played really well, the pair of them at the weekend.
Well, Kelly and Campese are the keys for them. They really are. Well, you mentioned the fixtures at the top and the Challenge Cup, how it would affect the top. But look at the bottom, where some clubs have 2 games to play in a week, you know, with the Challenge Cup games earlier in the season.
They're big games, those games backing up after the Challenge Cup weekend, aren't they?
Very much so.
Well, it's another Easter, isn't it, for those clubs? I think, going back to St Helens, the other thing that I think weighs in their favour slightly is that arguably the 2 best second rounds we had in the early part of the season were Joe Greenwood and Attilia Vea, and they're due to come back. Yeah. So again, to have done as well as they have, and I agree with you, the game against Wigan was just impressive, because they hardly had any backs out there. They won that game again on tenacious forward play, which Walmsley led, McCarthy Scarsbrook backed it up. I just think when you start then reintroducing players who played well earlier in the season, Saints have got the squad probably to do it.
LMS has such a tremendous season, hasn't he?
He has been brilliant.
I thought that game was the best I've seen of him, because as much as he's always been a really solid performer, a wholehearted performer, Graham, I thought his discipline was absolutely spot on, which isn't something I think you've always been able to say about the lad.
You're right about John Wilkin as well, because that must be Wilkin's best game of the season, I would have thought. He's like a leader, and his kicking game was much better.
Well, he got riled, didn't he?
Is that what happened?
I think it was. But also,
he got kicked in the head.
Oh, that's what it was, yeah.
Kicked in the head.
Mossy Masso's chased back seemed to sum up St Helens as well, because again, he's a cult figure, and we know what he can do rampaging the ball forward, but to run 60 metres just to cover a kick, I think that says everything about him.
Look at the other side of the coin.
He lifted the crowd and his team.
You look at the other side of the coin, you say St Helens won it.
Yeah.
There's a real argument there that Wigan lost it. The 3 basic mistakes they made for the tries coming back to
just going back.
That's not Wigan, is it?
That isn't.
But going back to mistakes, which links back to your question about every minute mattering, we are seeing more mistakes this year. Is that because teams are innately conservative because they know there's this promotion and relegation attached to this season? Is it because we've got too many games? Do we have more injuries? I don't remember a season where we've had more injuries across the board.
We seem to say that every year.
I think the game is so powerful and so fast.
So
and
should we be
strong
playing less matches rather than more for our elite players?
No, I don't. I see where you're coming from.
Rugby League 52
where you're coming from.
The club finance directors might have a view on that. And we are always going to suffer a little bit at this time of the season when you've got boys out injured, when we're blooding young people. I think it's great. Some of the good news stories we've got going on around the game, you know, centre on these young players who are getting their opportunities because we are sending big names to the NRL. Yeah. They're finally getting an opportunity. Whether that will be squashed a little bit by the marquee play rule, which I know we're going to touch on later, I don't know.
What
but the
about
fact is, while these kids are learning, and nobody more than Ash Handley at Leeds, who's had a nightmare couple of weeks, you know, there's a price to pay for it, and the price of that is that we're going to get more mistakes.
I want to just let me interrupt, Graham, just a moment, because I want to talk about individual players. We've had a Saints, we've had a Leeds. You sidestep well for a big lad.
Well, what about you? What about you?
I think the people who are at the top at the moment, St Helens, are the most likely winners.
No, I'm still sidestepping. I'm still.
Okay.
I'm coming off the left one this time.
You disappoint me. We'll come on.
If I said Wigan, you'd always expect me to say that.
I'll put Wigan. Graham says Wigan. Let's talk about some individual players. I want to come on to the young players, but I want to do it via an old stager, if I dare call him that. Danny Brough, 400th appearance at the weekend.
Yep.
Is he the best in Super League, Graham? In his position?
I would say Kevin Brown and Brough. Not a lot between them. He's very significant for Huddersfield. He's yes, probably just above Kevin. Kevin doesn't do it every week. Brough possibly does.
Yeah, I think that's one team that we haven't mentioned either yet, Huddersfield. And you know that was a pretty impressive win they had over a Warrington team that is shaky this season.
Coming on the back of the defeat against Wigan.
That's the important thing.
They bounced back. You know that we keep waiting for a team to have a run, and we mentioned it earlier. Leeds have had one, Wigan have had one, Saints have had one. Huddersfield could be going on one, and I don't think we should write them off, you know, for the top three just yet. Brough is central to them more than probably any other player, I think, in the competition.
Yeah.
Other teams can mask one big name missing. I'm not sure that Huddersfield can.
No,
but then again, he is the most durable halfback in the comp.
I mean,
by far.
Everybody talks about his kicking game, of which it's second to none. I think I can't think of anybody who has a more influential kicking game possibly in the sport, never mind just over here. But I think his defence has been fantastic in recent weeks as well. Magic weekend, he must have saved 3 tries on his own. He's always targeted, but he likes that physical side.
He's aggressive, isn't he?
I think it brings the best out of him, but he doesn't shy away from it. So many halfbacks are deployed, almost on the wing when it comes to defence, but not only is he influential in the middle of the field. Well, no, he didn't tackle at all. That was in his contract.
Yeah, no tackling.
I'm only signing if I'm not tackling.
But we all know he should be doing it for England, shouldn't
no,
he?
he shouldn't. No.
Are you giving Phil a chance to say Scotland's Danny Brough?
Yeah. The Braveheart.
I just thought I'd throw that one in.
Staying with Huddersfield, but moving on to the young players, because it is a byproduct of the injuries. And if you look at Huddersfield, Simpson over the last couple of rounds, Connor this season, Leeming too. There's some really, really good young players coming through, Danny.
Again, it opens the door for them, doesn't it? And I mean, young Simpson, what does he weigh? He's 11 stone wet through.
If that.
If that. You look at him and you can see mothers wiping a tear from their eye. They're wanting to nurse the boy. But yeah, he's standing up like a man, isn't he? He's putting himself about.
Had a couple of good games.
He's not shying away from the big lads when they come at him. So super. It shows that this is a sport for all shapes and sizes.
And no respecters of reputation either, which I like about the exuberance of youth. And the other guy who I thought was outstanding this weekend, Savelio at St Helens. Absolutely, because not only was he playing in the middle of the field, but he's got a great sidestep. And I'd throw another one in, somebody who I thought was superb, Fahoud Yahar on the wing for Catalan. He looks like he could be a future international. Great
name as well. John Badebza is another Frenchman worthy of a mention. Yep. He's got his opportunity at Hull Kingston Rovers.
Yeah, I like Gadwin Springer myself.
What, as a name or a player?
As a name, as a spaniel.
Catalan are going to be the iffy one, aren't they? They're going to make the 8, which I think they will do. I mean, we all.
Well, let's finish off the first part by talking. We've talked about who's finishing top, who's missing out of the top 8. Salford, Wakefield. Possibly, definitely Wakefield, more than likely Salford.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it Perm 2 of 3 from Widnes, Hull and Hull KR for you three?
Absolutely.
Go on then, Graham.
The two you mentioned, Wakefield and Salford, gone for my money. And then you go Hull, KR and Widnes, 2 out of your Perm 2 from those 3 to go with them.
Which comes down to the cup, I think, as well.
That might have a part to
either
play.
Going on in it or having a hangover from being knocked out of it.
I wouldn't rule Catalans out just yet. I think
that'd be fun in the middle 8. Championship clubs going to Catalan.
Well, they're still in the Challenge Cup, aren't they?
That would be great for Championship fans to have a nice weekend down in Perpignan. But I think in all likelihood,
it would also be good for the Super 8s to have a good day down in Catalan as well. Not just.
But I do think in terms of making that, escaping the trapdoor, if you like, in all likelihood, it is 2 from 3.
Catalan have got a pretty decent running as well, and they've got 2 games at home where they're almost impregnable this year. They've only lost once.
Well, that's the main.
And they play Widnes,
isn't it?
so that Widnes Catalan game could be very
So
interesting.
who's your money on them, Phil, to go down to stay in the middle eight?
I fear for Hull KR if Campese is ruled out for the season. He's got another scan, I think.
Even if Sandow comes in?
I don't know if they'll get him that quickly, but it'd be interesting if they did. Would he be their marquee player, which is another issue? Could they sign him this year, or would they have to wait until 2016?
So you're saying Widnes and Hull KR?
The key is with Campese, isn't it?
Yeah.
How soon they get him back, if they get him back.
I'm not sure.
That is the key for
I
them.
think Hull are
But
on a
also-
run. I can see them making it.
But also the teams that have they're playing in the earlier rounds of the Challenge Cup. They've 2 games to play in 1 week. That could play a part as well.
I think Hull KR seemed to me like a little bit like Castleford last year. You know, they love the excitement of the cup. They fancy that. I think the players might be just a little bit too focused on that and not paying enough attention to the job at hand. And I think that probably more than Campese, maybe the reason they finish in that 9th spot.
You know, I think I will go along with Wakefield, Salford, and
Widnes and Hull KR.
Don't be agreeing. That's no good.
No, it's not enough we do. But
I think
Widnes might get away with it.
What's interesting, though,
very briefly, Phil, because nearly finished.
What's interesting is the only club that knows they're going in the middle 8 is Wakefield. So there are 3 clubs who are planning to be in the top 8 who are going to end up in the middle 8, and it's how they then cope with that psychologically.
And it's almost as he knew, because we're going to talk more about Brian Smith, the new head coach of the Wakefield Trinity Wildcats, when we return after the break. Welcome back to the Arc in Headingley and another edition of Rugby League Back Chat. At the end of the first part, the name Brian Smith was mentioned. Will he be a wow for Wakefield, Danny?
Unless he brought his boots with him, I suspect not. He's got, 4 or 5 weeks now, 6 weeks, to try to put some semblance of a team spirit and get a structure, especially a defensive structure, into a group of players who really are sort of down on themselves, I think, as much as anything. And I look at that Wakefield squad and that team sheet, and I think they should be doing better than they are doing.
That's why he's the right man.
And that is, if there is a guy in World Rugby that's equipped to bring that little bit of pride and organisation back to them and give them a chance in those middle 8s, then it's probably Brian Smith.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's not that they needed somebody to come in and rebuild the club. They've actually got the people there that I think can probably do a job. They needed re-energising, their confidence building, small incremental improvements. Even in his first week, irrespective of who they were playing, the previous 2 or 3 they'd capitulated after half time. This week they didn't. So again, they can go on Monday morning, you can show them the video and say, getting slightly better every week. That's what he wants.
That's the key. There's one thing you do know, they will improve.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure that they have the players, though, as you say.
Well, he's
I'm not
shipped
sure
3
about
out
that.
already.
Yeah.
And there's at least 1, possibly 2 coming in, who I assume would be Brian Smith men. They know the way he plays. But you look at people like Peter Godinay, you can start to build a team a little bit around him.
Tim Smith has got to give more than he has been doing. You know, Danny Kerman, a couple of years ago, we were talking of him as, you know, a potential man of steel.
We've been saying that about Timmy Smith, don't we, ever since he came
Well,
over,
you know, but we know
they
that he
played
can
with
play
Brian
rugby.
at Parramatta, didn't he? So they know each other.
Might be related?
I think already, even though we know that the middle 8s are an absolute must for where they're going to be, I think they're already looking at that $1 million game, the £1 million game.
Are they in
Fourth versus fifth.
That's why he's been brought in. That is
versus fifth.
That's exactly why he's been brought in.
Wakefield are going to have 80 minutes, I think, to save their Super League future.
But he's also
I think he will be, okay, he's got a lot of building blocks he's got to put in place between now and then, but I think he's probably very
I mean, they
focused
wouldn't
on what
say
he's
it publicly, and he is a winner, and he will go into every game wanting to win, but he's effectively got a 6-week pre-season.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're in pre-season.
Yes,
now,
he is the
middle 8s?
only club that knows from the Super League exactly where he's going to be. Yeah. And as he said, once you get into the middle 8s, because we've never had it before, nobody knows how to approach it. Yeah. You know, it literally does go back to 0.
And
it's
it is
7 cup ties.
And it is, you know, you're not bottom of the table by a mile. You're all standing there on 0 points with everything to play for. And as bullish as Lee have been this season, you know,
it'll count
of the
for
championship, there's been a little bit of a chink in their armour already. That defeat at London, You know, they're now going to be playing Bradford in their last match of the championship season for who gets the bragging rights of finishing top of that pile.
I
They
think
could have brought anybody in, but for that one game you speak about. Anybody could have come in at Wakefield, but they've earmarked that game right from word go.
From the minute James
right
Webster
from the
said-
word go.
From the
Yeah.
minute James
But
Webster
also,
Well, the famous quote.
but also from not spending the salary cap. I think they knew that they were going to be in the bottom 4, which meant that they were going to be in the middle 8, which in all likelihood meant that they would be playing in that 4th B, 5th game. I don't think any of this has come as a surprise to Wakefield.
No.
Chairman Michael Carter, you know, made it very clear very early on when he took over the reins that he was not going to spend silly money. He was going to live within his means and try to build a business that meant something. And I think he deserves everybody's admiration for that, except he might not feel a lot of the love from Wakefield fans for being where they are.
And the bigger issue for him is what does he do with his ground? Because that will determine the long-term future of the club. Can he buy what they've got at the moment and turn it into something that he'd like to? Do they move to a new one where they've got some kind of corporate that they can trade off the back of? That's the elephant in the room for Wakefield. They have to secure
By
their
the
ground.
way, you never came up with your bottom 4 either. You put us on the spot where
So
you...
don't worry about that. That's been and gone now, Graham. You've missed the part. You know.
The story of my life.
You're
unfortunately.
sidestepping. I'm show and go. You're all saying that Brian Smith is a winner.
Yes.
There might be people watching this who are saying, "What's he won?"
He's won nothing, but he has
He has
built.
he has a legacy, hasn't
He
he?
has a legacy. He's built
He has a
teams.
legacy.
Yes.
He's built teams and he's built clubs that are, and that have, if you like, if you look at Bradford Bulls, you know,
Exactly.
the Bulls phenomenon was largely a Brian Smith creation.
Hull,
of
when he
its
first
time,
arrived,
you know.
bottom of the league.
And so, yeah, you listen, you can get to grand finals and come up a little bit short, but you've got to be a damn good team to get to a grand final.
Well,
in
you
the
look at the
first place.
coaches who now who've worked under him and how successful they've been coming through the game.
The man
as
is
well.
very, very highly thought of. So when you look around the game and people that we respect him,
Yeah.
I think that's all the nod that you need.
I think we were there when he was first unveiled, before he'd even taken over, while he was still jet-lagged. And although it's a small media room at Wakefield, when he arrived and sat down and did his first interview, there is an aura about him. I think if that rubs off on his players, then I think, again, he's taking them to a different level. It's not about the ability for so many of them. It's actually unlocking their potential that we know they already have. And you look like a kid like, we're talking about youngsters, Tom Johnson's been a bit of a revelation for them.
Sure.
I think playing under a Brian Smith at this young age, we'll see really how good he is.
You've only got to look just down the road from Wakefield at Castleford to see the job that Darryl Powell has done with a group of athletes, not vastly different. It all comes from within. We talk about we talk about players that can come on and make a big difference because of their attitude, not their ability. And I think more than ever this year in Super League, that will count for as much as star quality.
Well, let's turn our attention away from Super League to the sides who want to be in Super League and the middle 8, the Championship and all that needs sorting out. Bradford and Leigh, top of the tree. Sheffield a close third. Is there still some doings to be done as far as the top 4 in that division is concerned, Graham?
You would think that the top 2 are done and dusted. Phillips just reminded me about Sheffield earlier on. Maybe Ashton could work it with them on the 4th spot. Well, that's still up for grabs. I'm still sidestepping.
You are, yeah. Halifax, Featherstone and Dewsbury all still in the mix, Phil.
And London, and they're the dark horses for me. I think full-time professionalism does count as opposed to part-time, as you've got such a long season. It's taken London a while to not so much bed in to play the way they need to play in the Championship, but actually have the right personnel that can cope in that division. It's come later than they wanted, but Andrew Henderson coming back on the field has turned it around. My worry with the Championship and for the Championship clubs that are going to be in the middle 8 is that there's a massive division in that table now.
Yep.
You've got the top half of the clubs who are still fighting to get in there. You've got the bottom half and a big chasm between them. Now, every week a top half of the club plays a bottom half of the club. I'm not going to say they'll win every week, but it doesn't give them the standard and the intensity. So you look at this weekend's games coming up. Halifax have got to play Dewsbury, who are 2 of the 4 aspirants. Massive game. While they're playing each other and taking points off each other, London are at home to Hunslet. I think every week you're going to get that scenario.
Winning breeds confidence, Phil. That's what coaches tell us.
But
it's a worry, that division, because
I think
you haven't got the intensity.
I'm not sure I'd want that 4th spot in the Championship. And I know everybody's going for it. And Halifax and Featherstone, they're ambitious clubs. London, I'm really pleased for London, the project, less so the actual Super League aspirants. You know, I'm glad that they've finally found some form, a little bit of character, a little bit of personality.
You wouldn't have thought this in February,
and that they can build on that.
You wouldn't have thought this in February.
You would not have thought it.
It's so good to see
Jamie
them.
Thackeray's even had a renaissance.
You know, yeah, absolutely. But Andrew Henderson is the sort of key man in that. Can he do it? Can he lift them up enough by the scruff of the necks to be competitive in the middle eight? I really don't think he can. Yep, Leigh and Bradford, they're the two that are going to be the ones to watch. Sheffield, I agree, almost nailed on for third place. And then Perm, one of those three. I'm with Phil still. I think London can make a late run and maybe sneak that fourth spot.
I mean, you mentioned that Wakefield are building for this 4th v 5th game. All of the championship teams, no matter what they will say publicly, are building for the 5th spot. Yeah. And the 80 minutes at Wakefield. So the big games in that middle eight won't necessarily even involve the championship clubs playing the Super League clubs. It's which championship club. The Bradford League game in the middle eight is the one to definitely
it is,
attend.
but I think that given all the dramas that are going on at Salford at the moment, both on and off the field, I think that you know, Leigh and Bradford will be fancy turning them over as well as Wakefield. Even before they get to the 4th v 5th.
So 4th v 5th could be 2 Super League teams.
I wouldn't go that far.
See, Leigh could
but I certainly think one of Leigh or Bradford could sneak into the the top three.
Leigh could dip the toe in the water with the Challenge Cup, which I think Richard's going to come on to later on. They play Warrington, and that would be a real.
That could be last man standing, could that? Because there's
no
love lost.
And on the pitch and in the stands,
but
not in a bad way. Let's talk about desperation. Who's the more desperate then? Is it the likes of a Wakefield, who don't want to be missing out of Super League, or is it a club like Bradford who know what Super League is like? And all right, the novelty of a season in the Championship, if I dare call it that, I know you know what I mean, is okay. But to keep people coming into Odsal next year, they need to get back. Leigh have made a massive push. They need to get up. Yeah. There are some desperate sides wanting to dine at the top table.
I think Leigh are probably more desperate than Bradford. I don't think they have the resources that Bradford have. They don't quite have the fan base that Bradford have.
That's key.
And I think that it won't be the end of the world if Bradford don't make it and have to face another year in there. For Wakefield, again, if Michael Carter's looking at this as a long-term project, if he still has a new ground at the back of his mind, maybe a year away from the pressure, building a winning side in the Championship might not be that bad a deal for Wakefield.
You can't guarantee that. It's not just 1 year, is it? You have to get back. You have to be there straight away.
There's one massive black cloud hanging over all of them, and that is the distribution of finance next year. Because both Bradford and London, when they came down, although the RFL won't call it a parachute payment, all got the ability to spend, what was it, £900,000. Yeah. Leigh and Featherstone got £450,000. If you don't get there this year, and you're Bradford and Leigh, and your money could be halved from what you had last year, if you drop down as a Wakefield or Salford and you go from 1.8 million to 450,000, will you ever get out of the Championship again?
That's a worry.
It is.
Leigh have thrown a lot at it, and they're actually, more than hoping that they're in the mix.
I just hope, and this really is a fingers crossed exercise here, I think, Richard, is that I hope we don't return to the boom and bust that licensing was meant to eradicate, but actually didn't. I still think it's a real danger for clubs that are throwing everything.
Relegation, that's what does it, isn't it?
Have we ever had a relegation system where we haven't had clubs that are either yo-yo clubs or boom and bust clubs? I can't think of an era when we've had it when there hasn't been somebody who's, like Icarus, tried to touch the sun and died because of it. Even in the first years of Super League, we had Workington and Oldham, and it very nearly killed them.
Yeah.
Well, one more point on this before we do move on to the Challenge Cup. Do you three think that next year we'll see a different name in Super League, or will it be the 12 that we've watched this year? Graham's thinking how he can't answer it.
I think Leigh will be there.
I think we'll see a different name, but I think it'll be Bradford.
I think Leigh will be there. Having said that, with the first fixture of the season, when Leigh played Bradford, Leigh were quite fortunate there, because I don't think Bradford had no warm-up game.
No,
the weather interfered with all the preparation, and they went into that game really undercooked.
They were well in front and blew
having said that, Leigh, from what they've done this season, they deserve to be there.
Leigh, Bradford, Phil?
No, it'll stay exactly as it is. I don't think that the Championship teams will relish that intensity of 7 games. I don't think they've experienced it yet this year.
Let's move on to the Challenge Cup. It's so close.
What about you? Never mind.
No, I don't. I ask the questions, Graham. I don't answer them. We're so close to Wembley, you can almost smell it, Danny. It's really ratcheted up a notch, isn't it, when it gets to this stage?
It is. They're all thinking just a couple more games now, and it's our big day out. It's the year for us. If you're going to ask me who my money was on, I think I would probably still have to go with the Leeds Rhinos to back up. They loved what they experienced last year. I think there's still a swan song left in the legs of Jamie Peacock and Kevin Sinfield. I think they are still a team that can get themselves up for the big game. And when you're getting this close, they are massive games. So that's where my money at this point would still be.
St Helens, I think they've got witness in this next round, and I think they've got players coming back, as we already mentioned, so I think you have to can't look any further than St Helens.
I think we're all romantic guys round the table, so Hull
I love you too.
Hull KR would be nice on the 35th anniversary of their meeting. Catalan getting there would
we're
be
not
fantastic.
that romantic. No. Hang on, we're not that romantic. Let's get back to Leeds and St Helens.
Wouldn't it be great for the only trouble with Leeds and St Helens, which possibly is a likely final, is the fact that we've seen so many grand finals. Wembley was exciting last year because we had a different nameplate. Yeah. And I'd love again to see a Wembley whereby...
And how poor was that last year?
I quite enjoyed it. It was a good game.
Wembley is about the day, the occasion. It's about the story, isn't it?
And getting a different set of fans.
That's right. So I'm with Phil. I would love to see a repeat of Hull KR. I think that is the great derby rivalry.
I think we've got to be realistic here, boys.
But we've got to be realistic, so Leeds Saints it is for me too.
What about if Warrington's saving grace this year is a cup run rather than the league form? Because the way things are going, because the points are carried over in the Super 8, Warrington could be too far away to even make a challenge for the grand final. Does it then become, right lads, two games
I won't
to
put a penny on Warrington basically because you don't know which one's going to turn up.
That's right.
They could beat everyone in the competition, but you just do not know.
Tony Smith just has never found anybody to replace Lee Briers, has he? He's still perming guys around his 6 and 7, and he hasn't found a combination that works. And I don't think you get to Wembley or Old Trafford when you don't have that.
The half-back situation at Warrington is chronic, absolutely chronic.
Yeah.
I wanted to find out a bit more. You were dipping your toe in a pool of anti-French sentiment there. Why don't you want the Catalan Dragons at Wembley?
Well, can you imagine Catalan and say...
Widnes
at Wembley? Well, not Widnes.
Well, isn't that the point of the Cup, Graham? The aspiration, anybody can win it.
The point of the Cup, Richard, is to fill Wembley and to put on a big party day for Rugby League.
Fair,
and it's the one time in the year where we've got a massive terrestrial television crowd.
Absolutely.
That is our big birthday party.
But that was a downside of last year. How Castle performed last year. It was a letdown. It was a big letdown. Yeah. But I think it's a showpiece.
But in 2007, when Catalan did get there, completely unexpectedly, it didn't affect the crowd in that it wasn't a sellout, but it gives the neutrals something to hang on to.
Well, we need to say, Graham, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say au revoir to your French banter there because...
I won't get him on a second French team in Super League then.
The time has run out on part 2. We move from the Cup to Australia. We've already mentioned Brian Smith. The doyen of coaching, though, is Wayne Bennett, and his Brisbane Broncos are flying high. We'll talk more about them after the break. Welcome back to Rugby League Back Chat. Now, you may have thought Gordon Bennett about some of the opinions that have been offered up on the programme so far, but we're going to start talking about the NRL with Wayne Bennett. The man does it again. He's a coaching maestro, isn't he, Phil?
Well, you were talking about Brian Smith and the legacy that he's left for a whole load of coaches. There's 2 schools. There's the Wayne Bennett school, the Brian Smith school, both completely different philosophies. Wayne Bennett, the kind of guy who likes his players to go out and play, doesn't believe in giving them game plans, just prepares them to be the best they can be. And Brian Smith, absolutely meticulous, tells you which area of the field you can scratch your nose. So it's absolutely fascinating when those two have ever come up against each other. But Wayne Bennett is the Alex Ferguson of Rugby League. He's been at 3 clubs now, back at Brisbane bringing on some great young players, instilling them with confidence, but also getting the best out of the older ones there. Anthony Milford, a classic example, you know, he's taken him, given him a role, and suddenly he's playing to the best of his ability. And I've always been an admirer of the Wayne Bennett school. I think he's an internationalist, he's passionate about the game, very quiet. But again, we mentioned Aura before. He is somebody who, whenever you're in his presence, you know that there is greatness around you.
He's a doyen, as you'd say in Wigan, isn't he, Graham?
Doyen in Wigan is a pie. It's not a word we use in Wigan, but he is. He's what all's been said about Bennett that needs to be said. He's tremendous. I saw him on a Premier game recently, and he actually smiled, Richard, which is 20 or 30 years we've known Bennett in the game. That's very, very unusual. I mean, he's had issues off the field, and he's handled them very, very well. But one thing that I remember about Bennett, and always will do, we had a test match against Australia at City's new ground, and you know what they're like, the stewards there, you can hardly breathe in the tunnel around about there, and he just came out, Bennett, and said, let these people in, there's some tins in the dressing room. And we all walked. And now we used to do that 20, 30 years ago, but to do that 4 or 5 or 6, or how long it was, absolutely tremendous, man. I can't speak highly of him.
It is that presence, that aura, isn't
Absolutely.
it? I mean, because I think certainly in Super League we tend to have a cult of youth among coaches. There's you look at all of the appointments in recent years, Brian Smith apart, and they tend to be up and comers, and I think that's to be greatly encouraged. But if you look at something like the national team, you know, where we have a very young, untested coach in Steve McNamara, what we wouldn't give for someone of the quality of Wayne Bennett, you know, because if you remember, he went and he coached the New Zealand national team. He has got so much to give, such a wealth of experience, knowledge, and that wonderful, that key factor that every club looks for in man management. And he, you know, Brisbane have been in the wilderness for the last 3 or 4 years. You know, always the wealthiest club in the NRL, always pre-season spoken of as being, you know, up there in the running for honours. You bring Bennett back and suddenly it is a different club. It is back to the golden days.
He's a player's coach, I think. He relates them. I was told that his New Zealand role was to support Stephen Kearney. At no stage was he coaching the team. But what he did do was he wandered around behind certain players at certain times in training and just had a little word in their ear. And all of a sudden...
Man management, you said it.
And he managed Stephen Kearney. He made Kearney into the coach that he has become, did Wayne Bennett.
And I think there was a World Club Challenge game when Brisbane came over and played St Helens on a very snowy evening. Saints just nicked it. And Bennett was the most magnanimous losing coach I have ever heard. He wouldn't talk about Brisbane, he wouldn't talk about whether they should have won the game or threw the game away. All he wanted to do was laud St Helens for the way they played and the concept. And I think that spoke measures on it.
He thinks about the game. The game is very close to him.
Well, he's the inventor of the Tri-Nations, isn't he?
Yeah.
So
that's what says it all.
It's, you know, it's a good news story all round, I think. One, to see Brisbane back up where they belong, you know, after a bit of a dry period, but also to see the best coach that probably the sport has ever seen back where he belongs, right on top of the pile. And I think, you know, going into the climax of the NRL season, you'd have to say that Brisbane, you know, from being on nobody's lips at the start of the year, you know, it's tough to see beyond them.
Well, can you think of a better coach in all your history in the game? Can you think of a better coach?
Well, I'm not quite that old.
Oh, you are.
But, you know,
no, I'm glad you asked Danny that.
You know,
I'm coming to you as well.
You've got Peter Fox and Maurice Bamford. You know,
I repeat the question.
Let's talk about another coach, and it's the other side of the coin, because another big club in the NRL, Manly, Des Hasler, another grand final winning coach. They could possibly this weekend have their worst ever start to the season since Danny was in short trousers.
Yeah.
That long. And it sounds as though they've got Trent Barrett lined up for next year anyway. Yeah. But the one thing that we do admire about the NRL, and you started the programme quite rightly saying, does every minute matter, is you look at the league table again this year, even allowing for bye rounds, the state of origin, anybody genuinely can beat and does beat anybody. Yeah. You know, if you'd have looked at the table at the beginning of the season and said Manly would be at the bottom 2/3 of the way through, you know, it wouldn't have seemed credible. But if you look at the table this year in the Super League, we're not going to have that next year.
Manly have been a little bit of an example, if you like, one of bad management and bad luck, because they've had some terrible injuries, problems all through the season. I think Cronulla last year had a nightmare. You know, they were left stranded, but they've come back quite strong. for Manly, they made a strange piece of business to me when they let Glenn Stewart leave, who is one of the most charismatic players in the competition, you know, an absolute star of the show. And then it looked on the back of that as though everything was just going belly up, because suddenly Kieran Foran, who was wanting away, Daly Cherry Evans signed a contract to leave. He's since backflipped for the not inconsiderable sum of
I wonder why he did that. Why do you think he did that?
There's 10 million reasons over 8 seasons, which I think will be, which given that he's only second fiddle anyway in Queensland and Australia to Cooper Cronk, will rather test the finance directors at Super League clubs when we come to the marquee rule.
It's partly about the salary cap though, isn't it? Because what they do have is a very stringent salary cap, whereby clubs like Manly will get a group of players through that will all demand a certain wage, and some of them have to drop off.
Yeah.
And that makes the other team stronger, and that's why a properly enforced salary cap that everybody spends up to, which is the first thing we need to do over here if we're serious about an intense Super League, everybody has to play the game.
You mentioned Cooper Cronk there. How much credence do you put on him becoming a marquee player over here?
Yeah, I want to talk marquee players, so you've done well there, Graham. You watch a lot
That's
of NRL.
very nice of you to say so,
No
Richard,
problem. You won't get
you say that about
no,
me.
you won't get another one. If you're watching the NRL week in, week out, you've got your checkbook open.
Yeah.
Who are you looking at as bringing in to be one of these? Are you signing Cooper Cronk for Warrington then? I think you used the word chronic, didn't you, about their halfbacks?
Did I say that?
I think you did, Graham.
I think that's me done at Warrington from here. I think it is. I think he's too late in his career. Really, 32,
31.
And his 2-year contract to run.
It's coming up 32.
You never know.
I think, guys, we are realistically going to be looking at the Cooper Cronks as opposed to the Daly Cherry Evans, aren't we? Because we've got to get guys who have they've got the full row of medals on the chest. They're wanting a bit of a payday. They're wanting a bit of an experience.
Over 30s?
I think it has to be, because I don't think financially.
It was ever thus. It's not changed.
Necessarily.
It was ever thus.
I mean, the great thing is that Australia aren't playing in any internationals for a year. So there's a group of players who may not play for their country again, who will be available as marquee signings. So well done to Australia for not playing internationals. That's going to help us.
Could I just touch on something that Danny mentioned a few weeks? Is that all right with you?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned injuries in Australia.
Yeah.
How unlucky has Gemma been this season after the fabulous?
James Graham has been incredibly unlucky, and if you're looking at the marquee player in the widest sense, someone like James Graham may well be a target, for his own club, St Helens. If I was going to pick one player out of the NRL this year, it wouldn't be Cooper Cronk or Cameron Smith or Billy Slater. Quite apart from Greg Inglis, who I don't think we can afford, I'd be looking at Gareth Widdop.
And I think he'll be a marquee player here next year.
Would you think he would come?
But on Tompkins and on James Graham, is that the point of the marquee rule, to bring homegrown players back as a marquee
Well, it's not,
player?
but Sam Tompkins may well be Wigan's marquee player next year.
Just fall into the runs.
One of the issues, it's a twofold mechanism. It enables clubs to not only go out and buy, but also retain, and I think that's really important. We talked about how well Alex Walmsley had played this year. He was due a new contract at Saints. There was NRL interest. Now, the marquee player hadn't come in, but you could make him your marquee player. So I think, again, it enables clubs to hold on to what we've got.
I don't think
it
we're going to
enables
see
them to bring some back, but I think we'll get people who are currently playing Origin. I think Trent Hodgkinson might come over.
I think you're going to see one or two big names, but I don't think you're going to see it sweeping the board. I really don't.
No.
I think, one, culturally, there are clubs that resist it just on the financial grounds. Two, I'm not sure that however much money you throw at a big name State of Origin player, he would want to play in front of 2,500 people at Salford.
But I still think...
I think that is the question.
And you also have a team that where a marquee player would make a difference. It's no issue just getting a marquee player in, big money,
but it's also
and
good
make
for
no
the
difference
sport, isn't it? I mean, if we get Paul Gallen playing for any one of our teams, it will bring spectators to the grounds that he plays at.
When Ronaldo went to Real Madrid, he's for all the ridiculous millions he did, they made that money back in shirt sales. I think that the whole marketing concept of the marquee player can't be ignored. It isn't just about the difference to make on the field. It's about it's about the fans they bring through the turnstile. It's about the shirts they sell. It's about much more than that. But still, I don't think that Super League is that attractive to some of the guys that we would consider marquee players.
The best example of what you're talking about.
Sam Burgess won't be coming back as a marquee player.
Joey Jones coming to Warrington a few years ago.
Yeah.
from a marketing point of view.
I think, but for the fact
Absolutely
Well, he
fabulous.
lost to Wakefield all those
but
years
for the
ago.
fact he's been injured all this time, Todd Carney would have been a marquee type player that again you would want to see coming around Europe. But you as a weekly newspaper proprietor, how good has it been that a lot of your column inches are being filled by speculation about who even might be a marquee player?
Well, that's great.
Isn't that what's part of it?
It is grist to the mill. It's what we thrive on. You know, I know coaches and chairmen quite often get on our backs for fueling speculation, but that's what the fans want. They want to be talking about it. They want to be excited by the prospect of a Sam Burgess back from Union, a Cooper Cronk coming up here from Melbourne.
Williams.
You know,
This will give us a chance on column inches in other areas as well, hopefully.
well, you'd like to think so. It spices things up for next year in a way that the 12s and 8s have done it this year, all of which is great for the game. Will it make a groundbreaking difference to the competition? I'm not sure.
No,
It will.
It's better than talking about a Canadian team coming playing in London, isn't it?
I think the other
That gives you
thing-
more column inches than a Canadian team going over.
The other thing that's really interesting as well is that we've got this ability now to bring in a marquee player which is likely to only be at the clubs that can afford it, who are the top clubs. But one of the things you stressed at the beginning, and we've all talked about, is they're the clubs that are producing the academy talent as well. And it's got to be a balance. It's not an either or. You're not going to bring in a Cooper Cronk and give 3 of your academy-based players the elbow. You know, if he comes into the environment at Warrington, they're still bringing through some of the best kids in the game.
And it's exactly the same syndrome as if you had Wayne Bennett at your club.
Yeah.
You know, it's that influence, it's that aura, it's that experience and personality. It's the stardust rubbing off on everybody
Is it
around
good
the
for a
organisation.
dressing room? Is it good for a dressing room? Someone
Depending
in
on
big
who it is.
bucks, and then there's lots of people in there who, if we're led to believe it's true, on not much more than minimum wage.
Yeah, I
If he's
think
winning your games, it is. That's the crux.
But that's also
if
part
he's
of the
winning your
coaches' man
games,
management.
if he's winning your games, it's absolutely
I'd
worth it.
go back
The
to-
worry is
Time has beaten us, I'm afraid, gentlemen.
All I
Time-
would say on that is Ellery Hanley.
Okay, you've said it. Let's look at the fixtures in round 15 over in the NRL. On Friday at 11:15, it's the Sea Eagles against the Tigers. 3 games on Saturday, kicking off at 6 in the morning with the Raiders versus the Cowboys, followed by the Titans hosting the Warriors at 8:30, and then at 10:30 it's the Bulldogs and Panthers. On Sunday, the Knights take on the Sharks at 5, and the Storm face the Broncos at 7. While the Monday game is the Dragons against the Roosters, and that's a 10 o'clock start. You can check out all this and more at www.premiersports.tv. That's all we've got time for on this edition of Rugby League Back Chat. My heartfelt thanks to Danny Lockwood and Phil Kaplan. My begrudging gratitude to Graham Lovett. Dave Woods will be back in this chair for the next edition. I hope you can join us for it. Goodbye.